Okay, music lovers, serious music lovers, and those looking around at music and just jumping the bandwagons. Come on in and join this party. Um, I always speak from my heart and the seriousness of my passion for music, and I was listening to some music this morning from a band called One Republic and another band called Three Doors Down, and then I went into some Sammy Hagar, and this crossed my heart was as of right now, there's still a long ways to go, but as of right now, I saying, is new rock as good as the old school stuff? Now, I'm 57 years old, so it's a normal reaction that I'm going to lean towards the older rock than the newer rock, like most people do. Like, if somebody's listening to new stuff, they're going to lean towards the new stuff because that's what they grew up with, that's what they listen to. Meanwhile, the older folks, they lean towards the older stuff because that's what they grew up. When you're in your teens and your 20s and you're 10, 12 years old, you grew up with this stuff, you listened to it, it was embedded in your mind, so of course you're going to lean towards what you grew up with. It's like issues like Bon Scott and Brian Johnson of AC/DC. You notice the older school, the older timers lean towards Bon Scott, the newer timers lean towards Brian Johnson. That's what makes a great music critic. His open-mindedness to accept whether old or new, whether he's young or old, he takes it for what it is. So, to be honest, from my heart, to be honest, as I've been listening to, like I listened to the Imagine Dragons not too long ago, like I said, I listened to One Republic and Three Doors Down, and then I got into some Sammy Hagar. I sensed authenticity. I sensed more passion. I sensed more into the actual song from the old timers. Like when I listened to Sammy Hagar, I listened to a few of his albums that he'd come out in the 80s, and then I was listening to Three Doors Down and One Republic. I have to lean honestly towards, don't get me wrong, the new stuff is okay, some of it was good, but the intangibles of like what comes from their heart, did they live the song that they're singing? Did they write the song? Sammy Hagar wrote a lot of his own music, and I was very shocked. But when I listened to it, I'm like, from the heart, I think the old timers were in it for the passion more than maybe the new timers. They really lived what they wrote. They really had a passion for what they wrote. They just came out with a flow that the new timers, I'm not saying they don't lack it a lot, but they seem to lack a little bit of that desire, that passion that we had back in the 70s and back in the 80s. And it's unfortunate. But don't get me wrong again. The new stuff is okay. I've been listening to the new stuff. They're okay. I got nothing against their music. But consistently, based on what I've heard from the old schools and based on what I hear from the new schools, the old schools were more consistent. They were more serious about their writing. They were more serious about, it was more about the music. It was, sure, they wanted the fame and the fortune. They wanted this, they wanted that. They wanted to be on stage. They wanted to sing for the people, just like the new schoolers. But when they write a song, are they writing about themselves and the band, or are they just trying to automatically think, oh, I want to be famous, I want to be a star, no matter what it takes, even if I got to buy a song off of somebody, even if I got to find a songwriter, take his song and put it to music. To me, that lacks the passion. But as of right now, I'm just throwing out an example. When I listen to some old school Sammy Hagar, and when I listen to One Republic and Imagine Dragons and Three Doors Down, there's definitely something I see, a lack of consistency with the new singers compared to the old singers. So that's my personal opinion. Like I said, if you grew up with Imagine Dragons, if you grew up with One Republic, if you grew up with Sammy Hagar, just setting an example, you're going to automatically lean towards it, because when you're in your teens and your 20s, when you were out there partying, when you were out there doing your youthful excitement, whatever you were doing, that's the music you grew up with. But overall, if I have to say, is the old school better than the new school? Yes, definitely, no doubt. So your newbies out there that are more youngins who grew up with the 2000s, before you judge this video, take the time and go back in time and maybe listen to what your parents listened to. What did your parents listen to? My son, who's 30 years old, he called me one day and I talked to him on the phone. He says, "Hey, Dad." I says, "Yeah." He was out in Chicago, Illinois. He says, "Hey, Dad, guess what I'm listening to?" I'm like, "What?" He says, "Molly Hatchet."
Get out of here.
I says, "What? You're listening to Molly Hatchet?" "Yeah." He says, "I listen to Whiskey Man. Pretty good song, Dad." You know, and here's a 30-year-old, he's complimenting me on my music. So you newbies out there, you were schooled by your parents. You grew up listening to some of the old school stuff when you were really young. So take that into consideration. And but this video is just going to be pretty much, is old school rock better than new school rock? Yes, definitely. I'm not being biased because I grew up with it. I'm being biased because I'm taking it all into consideration. That, did they write the songs? Were they passionate about the music? Was it about just making the money, or was it about the fans? Was it about, did they live their music? You know, those are the things you take. Were they consistent? Were they really consistent? You know, things like that you got to take into consideration. So, not saying the new school is bad. Like I said, the new school is good. Some of it's really good. But consistently, as I listen to the old school music, that definitely beats out the new school, no doubt. So this video will be up on YouTube. I could possibly be the greatest music critic of all times.